Welcome back to Epic Screen. Today we are diving straight into the deep, foundational, structural wreckage of James Gunn's DCU, because as the disastrous, highly anticipated box office tracking numbers officially roll in for Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, we don't have to go out on a limb to say this newly minted cinematic universe is off to a chaotic, completely dead-on arrival start. Let's recap exactly how we got to this point, because the timeline of this franchise is a masterclass in executive mismanagement. James Gunn's very first public act as the co-CEO of the newly founded DC Studios was to unceremoniously fire Henry Cavill just days after Cavill announced his return to the role. From there, it was an immediate downward spiral as Gunn had to sit through a brutal, historically embarrassing string of inherited late-stage DCEU flops: Black Adam, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, The Flash, Blue Beetle, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, and Joker, Folie à Deux. But once the universe was finally entirely in his own hands, he chose to launch this brand new DCU not with a flagship film, but with an animated series that nobody actually watched: Creature Commandos. Right out of the gate, there is a massive structural flaw here. Nobody, not the fans and certainly not the casual moviegoers, knows where the DCU officially starts or what is even considered canon anymore. When asked directly about continuity, Gunn's answers are pure corporate double talk. He claims, "The Suicide Squad and Peacemaker Season 1 are just unreliable memories of what happened in the new universe." He reshot the ending of Peacemaker to awkwardly force it into Season 2, claims the Blue Beetle movie doesn't count but the actor does, and recently confirmed a Clayface origin movie completely lacking Batman is chronologically the first story in the DCU. It is a total incoherent mess, largely because Gunn has openly stated that he thinks fans care way too much about canon in the first place, completely alienating the hardcore comic book audience that forms the backbone of these franchises. That casual disregard for core comic lore became glaringly obvious with Superman, a film that can best be described as heavily gassed up mid. Access Media tried to perform Olympian-level mental gymnastics to save face, asking absurd questions like, is 800 million the new 1 billion? But the reality is the studio was desperately trying to inflate its value ahead of a massive corporate shakeup. Now, the brand new Skydance Paramount move to absorb Warner Brothers Discovery is looming, creating a massive debt-ridden corporate entity. With the studio officially changing hands and facing a mountain of financial pressure, the safety net is completely gone. The new corporate overlords are holding a magnifying glass over every single dollar spent, and they aren't going to look at underperforming vanity projects with leniency. This brings us directly to the impending disaster of Supergirl and its star, Milly Alcock, who seems entirely determined to tank her own movie in the press. Alcock has embarked on a generational run of imparting condescending Hollywood gobbledygook onto the general public. In a bizarre interview cycle just days before the film's release, Alcock addressed questions about Kara Zor-El's sexuality by telling Queerly Radio, "What makes this film beautiful is that it's not centered around a man. It's not centered around love at all." She probably goes both ways. While trying to frame a mainstream comic book movie financed by a multi-billion-dollar multinational corporation as an edgy punk rock subversion of the genre, she completely alienated core comic fans by reducing decades of established lore to a modern Hollywood talking point. Contrast Alcock's defensive, combative attitude with her former House of the Dragon co-star Matt Smith, who perfectly noted in a past interview that at the end of the day, these massive franchises belong entirely to the fans, and it's the actor's job to deliver for them, not lecture them. The reality is that even if Alcock had kept her mouth shut, Supergirl is fundamentally cooked because of the creative choices driving it. At the end of the Superman movie, Supergirl literally makes her grand introduction by calling Superman a choice expletive. The first Supergirl trailer opens with Krypto the Superdog urinating directly onto a photo of Superman's face. The initial teaser poster traded truth, justice, and the American way for truth, justice, and whatever. The film aggressively pushes a version of Superman where he is mocked as a naive, stubborn dork and a nerd, aligning perfectly with Gunn's cynical view of traditional heroism. Instead of the hopeful, aspirational figures that built DC's legacy, we are being handed an iteration that treats sincerity like a punchline. Unsurprisingly, the tracking numbers are completely grim, despite online coping mechanisms claiming a $175 million movie only needs a 2x multiplier to break even, conveniently forgetting massive global marketing costs and theater cuts. The domestic opening weekend projection projections have completely plummeted from an initial $65 million down to a catastrophic $40 million to $49 million range. Industry trackers are reporting that pre-sales everywhere look weak to dreadful, positioning Supergirl to open on par with, or even lower than, the Marvels and Joker 2. To save the film, the studio has deployed wave after wave of social media influencers. These access-driven accounts are calling it the best blockbuster of the summer, but the more alarming mainstream critical reviews are comparing its tone and trajectory directly to Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, another female-led Warner Bros. Spin-off that suffered a catastrophic box office fate. Ultimately, there is way more riding on this than just one movie. The entire future of the DCU is at stake, but the biggest issue is that the face of this universe isn't Superman or Batman, it's James Gunn's ego. Gunn animated himself into the Creature Commandos intro, put his own face on a Superman comic book cover, cast his own wife in a prominent role, and seemingly based the vain, hair-dyeing Rick Flag Sr. on himself. He is actively stripping away traditional comic elements, openly admitting he changed Green Lanterns to lanterns because the green was stupid, turning a cosmic space cop adventure into a terrestrial clone of True Detective. James Gunn doesn't believe in traditional heroism, and it shows in his work. When asked if his multi-year plans would survive if these movies continue to underperform, Gunn even admitted that whether he is able to fulfill his promises depends on a lot of things. If Supergirl plummets at the box office this weekend, the newly formed studio heads are going to look at the numbers, look at Gunn's polarizing choices, and likely bring this entire universe to a swift, unceremonious end. They aren't tied to the old regime's promises, and they won't hesitate to pull the plug on an active multi-billion-dollar money pit. What do you think? Is the DCU completely dead on arrival, or can Supergirl pull off a miracle at the final hour? Let me know what you think of this unfolding disaster in the comments below, and make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss next week's breakdown.